Hello and welcome to my channel. So in this video, I want to share with you the experience that I've had in terms of implementation of core banking system changeover from the old system to the new system. I've been implementing core banking systems for the last 2 decades, and I thought it's necessary for me to share with you the mindset that you should carry with you in terms of how we are supposed to implement a project that is related to changeover of core banking system from the old system to the new system. So core banking system changeover has never been easy, I can tell you from my experience. It's a very challenging environment, and I can tell you it's actually called a transformational project. It's not like any normal project, because you're going to change so many things in terms of the old way of doing things, the processes, the standard operating procedures. Most of them they're also going to change, and it normally takes a lot of time. Maybe minimum if it's a normal changeover, it's around 18 months from experience. But you can go as far as 2 or 3 years when you try to change the core banking system. So I decided to share with you the kind of mindset that you have to carry with you when you want to implement successfully the core banking system as a project. So in this section of the video, we are going to cover in terms of governance and decision making. So governance is very important in a project environment. What do we mean by governance? We're just talking about how things are going to be done in the project. How are you going to run the project? It could be in terms of leadership. It could be in terms of templates. It could be in terms of team. It could be in terms of processes and procedures, sign-offs, documentation, and so on and so forth. So governance and decision is very important. So in this section, we are going to cover more on. Let me just take my pen here. Okay, we are going to cover more on how to control decisions before the decisions are actually controlling the project. So this is what we are going to cover here as a mindset, and we are going to cover 5 mindset principles to manage this part of changeover in a core banking system implementation. So let us look at what we are going to cover. Okay, we are going to cover governance must be active, not ceremonial. We are also going to cover the project board must remove blockers. We are also going to cover the change control board, protects go live stability, and also escalation is a discipline and not a failure, and also the decisions. So let's go through one by one. So the first mindset is governance must be active and not ceremonial. Let me expand on this. I've seen so many projects where governance is actually being done as a ceremonial, which means people are celebrating milestones. That's only you start seeing a lot of people that are expected to be part of the governance. And instead of using it as a proactive activity from the beginning all the way up to the end. So what does it matter? Governance that only receives updates without acting on them gives the illusion of oversight, while real blockers, they sit unresolved. This is very important. So governance must resolve the issues. So what goes wrong if this is ignored? Okay, let us look at it. Meetings, they become status rituals, okay, while unresolved risks, they accumulate. So if you ignore the proactive governance, you'll find that the issues, they remain unresolved, and the numbers always increase when people, they just come for a status update. So what is the right mindset that the project manager should apply? The board, they exist to make decisions, remove blockers, and also protect the go live path. So project board or steering committee, it must know its purpose. It must understand why it must exist. If you want to understand more about project board, I've also created a full video on project board. I'm going to leave a link in the description. You can also watch it from my channel. So the board is supposed to be making decisions and remove blockers, not just receiving status updates. It's very important, okay? So let us look at a real-world scenario for the CBS banking. For 6 consecutive steering committee meetings, the same interface defect is listed as in progress. No decision is ever made, no escalation is triggered, and the defect is still open the week before the go live. So it means since this has been happening for 6 consecutive steering committee meetings, a defect was being reported, but it was never acted upon. It was never resolved. So this is now towards go live, and you can see it's still open a week before go live. So it means the governance part of the project, especially on the CBS side, is not happening. That is why this issue is not being acted upon. So let us look at the practical actions or checklists that we can look at. You require every governance meeting to produce decisions, to unblock actions, and not just updates. So, as a practical activity for this mindset, you have to make sure that every governance meeting is actually focusing on the decisions, is also focusing on unblocking whatever is stopping the team from progressing. So that will make your core banking system implementation successful. Then also track how long each open item has been on the governance agenda. You might find cases where something is open for a long time and no one is putting effort to make sure that for the next meeting, this item is actually closed. So as a mindset, always make sure that you go to the board or to the steering committee with some decisions, action items. And also if there's a blocker, say for example, you're failing to get resources from the functional managers, then you can raise it with the board. They can try to make sure that there's a balance between the BAU and also the project. So it's quite important that you raise these blockers as quickly as possible. Then escalate anything unresolved for more than one governance cycle. So when it comes to the governance of the project, it's very important. If something has not been resolved in the last cycle, then it means no one is acting on it, and it might be quite important to start escalating that issue. So it's very important to have this mindset. Governance should be proactive. The main word here is proactive, okay? Not ceremonial. You cannot just come for governance to celebrate some milestones and so on. You should also come in terms of decisions. You should also come in terms of removing blockers. So the next mindset that we have here, the second mindset, is the project board must remove blockers, not just receive updates. This is very important. I've seen this mistake in other projects where they actually just come in for updates, then the meeting is over. They should be able also to remove blockers. So why does it matter? Why does this matter? A project board can only listen to status reports without actively removing the obstacles raised in them. And it's governance in the name only, which means you're just doing governance, but governance, you're also supposed to make decisions. You're also supposed to remove blockers. You're supposed to help the team to understand. You're supposed to help the team to progress if they're facing any challenges. So what goes wrong if this is ignored, okay? The project team carries risks it cannot resolve, which means if they've got blockers which are not being removed by the board, they are most likely going to proceed. But those blockers might affect the project, so they become a risk. So what is the correct mindset for the project manager here? The senior stakeholder must unblock funding, okay? Police, they might change some policy to help the project. They can also increase resources where it's necessary. Financial, non-financial, human, and non-human resources, they can also do that. And they take ownership of business issues. I can tell you, when you're implementing a core banking system, there are certain decisions that have to be made. Some of them, it might be to do with police, which has to be removed in order to accommodate the new system, or it has to be changed in order to accommodate the new system. So you need the project board to be able to remove those blockers. So let us look at a scenario that you might have in a project environment for core banking system. A workstream lead raises the same resourcing shortfall in 3 consecutive project board meetings. Each time it's noted by the fourth meeting, the delay it could cause has become unrecoverable within the original plan. So this is one of the examples. So a workstream lead has been reporting this consecutively for 3 times in the project board meetings, and each time it is just noted. There's no resolution. There's no intention to have it closed. It's just being noted, which means they're just postponing the problem. Then the delay it caused has become unrecoverable within the go live dates, which means they were carrying over a problem which was never resolved. They were carrying over a blocker which was never resolved. And then at the end of the day, it's now affecting the go live scenario. So that mindset is very important. You should always have the project board actually removing blockers. So what are the practical actions or checklists that we should have? Okay, you need to confirm that every raised blocker has a name or owner and a resolution deadline. This is very important. Instead of just noting down issues, there must be a way or some intentions to resolve and close this issue up to the end. Then the third one is to follow up prior blockers at the start of each board meeting, which means before you start every meeting, you need to check were there any blockers from the previous meeting that could be raised again or that needs to be checked until they're closed. Then also, one practical action is to measure the board's effectiveness by blockers that have been cleared, not just by meeting that has been held. I've seen so many projects where I want to call them clients or banks. They have this monthly meeting. They have monthly meeting, but you find in some cases these meetings they're just rituals. They're not resolving issues. They're not helping the project. So the mindset that is very important when it comes to implementation of core banking system is to make sure that the board is removing these blockers. They're actually following up in terms of issues to be closed. Then the change control board protects. So let us look at number 3 of this section or this cluster. The change control board protects the go live stability. So what does this mean? It means any other changes that have to come into the project in a predictive environment, they are actually controlled by the project board, change control board (CCB). But in an agile environment, they are controlled by the product owner as they reprioritize any changes. So if it's a predictive environment, then the change control board, which is CCB, must protect the go live stability. This is very important. So how do they protect? There are so many ways to protect. So the first one is to make sure that the changes that are coming in, to some extent, they don't affect so much in terms of the project timelines. Okay, so they approve them based on how what is going to be the impact on both the cost, also the timelines, and also the scope quality, and also the risk. So to protect the stability is on the risk side. If some changes are too risky, then the CCB or the change control board might be forced not to approve that change. So why does it matter? Okay, uncontrolled changes close to go live are one of the most common causes. Okay, these are one of the most common causes of last minute instability because each change looks small in isolation. Okay, but if you aggregate it, it becomes a very big risk. So it matters a lot. There are some changes which might come towards the end, and they might result in the team not being able to test the banking system comprehensively because they're coming late and they're being accepted. Then you're only going to find it when you go live. When you go live, you find there's a lot of instability because some of these things were not properly tested. So what goes wrong if this is ignored? Okay, this is very important. Uncontrolled changes, they create hidden defects and late rework. So if you have got uncontrolled changes coming in towards the go live period, you'll find that you might have some defects which are never going to be resolved before go live or even picked before go live. Even the testing might not even complete to pick some of these defects. Or you might have some defects which are going to result in rework, which means additional information, and that is also going to affect the project timelines. So it is very important that you don't ignore this mindset. Change control board should always protect the go live stability. So what is the mindset that the project manager should have? Every late change must be assessed for risk, for testing, for data, for training, and also for reporting and the cutover impact. So this mindset is actually very generic, not just even specific to core banking system implementation. Whenever there's a change that is coming in, as a project manager, you should always, or as a project team, you should always assess the impact on risk, on testing, on data, on cost, on training, on reporting, and so on and so forth. So that's a good mindset that you should have as a project manager. So let us look at a scenario. A branch operations head requests quick changes to overdraft fee logic 3 weeks before go live. So this is 3 weeks before go live, very close to go live. It's approved informally over email. Approved informally over email. Okay, not CCB, but over email. It later turns out to affect reporting, to affect customer communication, and also already signed off test scripts. So this is a scenario. A branch operation manager is requesting some changes, which are informal accepted through some email. Then later on, you discover that it's affecting. So this is a very important mindset. It means the CCB was supposed to have protected the stability of the system by doing a proper impact analysis of the change, and then also to see what else is going to be affected, and should you continue with the same date or you have to change the date. So what are the practical actions that we should expect from here? So the first one is we need to route every scope of configuration or change through the change control board. So this is very important. All changes must be controlled. Whether it's small or big, it must be taken through the change control board. Should also assess the full downstream impact on tests, training, reporting, and also communication before approving any change. So change assessment is very important. Look at the impact. Don't make the mistake I've seen with some other project managers. They just look at the triple constraints: cost, time, and also scope. Also expand it to risk, even quality, to also even the reporting, and so on and so forth. Then set the formal change freeze window ahead of go live. This is very important. This mindset is very helpful. So towards go live, you must agree. And I can tell you, a month before go live is reasonable for you to make some freeze. Unless if there's something that is very serious that is going to come during that period, then you might be forced to change it. But in most cases, once the freeze is done, the freeze is done. You don't have to change it. Otherwise, you start introducing some things which can affect the project. Then the fourth one that we're looking at in this cluster of governance and decision is escalation is a discipline and it's not a failure. Okay. So in a project, when you see that it's necessary to escalate, you have to do so. But remember, as a project manager, you're employed to run the day-to-day activities of the project. You only escalate when it's beyond your control. For example, when you need approval, when you need more authority to act on something. So don't feel bad when it comes to escalation, but try by all means to make sure that you try to act on something else before you escalate. So why does it matter? Teams that avoid escalating problems, hoping to resolve them quietly, they often turn manageable issues into program level crisis. Okay, so this is very important. So you should encourage your teams to escalate from these work streams to the project manager, the program manager, and also even for the program manager or project manager to escalate to the board. Sometimes it might help to resolve issues. For example, when it comes to resources, I've seen it when one of the clients they were procuring servers. It was only after escalation that they managed to bring them on site. Otherwise, it was going to be a crisis. So what goes wrong if this is ignored? This is very important. Teams, they hide problems until they become a go-live crisis. So you need to always make sure that your teams are escalating as quickly as possible. Then what is the correct mindset for the project manager? You need timely escalation, okay, to protect delivery. Late escalation is normally, it protects nobody. It will create a crisis. Then let us look at a scenario, okay? A vendor resourcing gap on the interface team goes unescalated for a month before the workstream lead because the workstream lead didn't want to look like they couldn't manage it. By the time it reaches the steering committee, 3 critical interfaces were behind schedule. So the mindset is very important. Escalation is very important. And always encourage it within your team, either to escalate to you or for you to escalate to the project board. So what are the practical checklists here? You need to set a clear threshold and timeline for when the issue must be escalated. So during the start of the project, like what I normally do is, we agree in terms of escalation matrix. After how long should we escalate an issue? It could be after 2 meetings, for example. It could be if the delay is more than 1 week. So it depends on what you're going to agree in your escalation matrix. Once you have agreed on the escalation matrix, you have to make sure that it's also being done by the team. You need to encourage the team to always escalate if there's an issue within those matrix parameters. Then you also need to recognize and also reward escalation rather than treating it as a failure signal. So any early escalation, it must be recognized. Otherwise, you're going to have issues. So it's not like a failure signal. It shows that people, they are very much worried. They want something to be done. Then you're also supposed to review escalation patterns regularly. Okay? Remember, you've created your escalation matrix. So how do you pick early warnings from the escalations? So like what I normally do in my projects, almost every week, when every work stream is going to report, they give me one section at the bottom of the reporting item, whether it's PowerPoint or Word, escalation required. So which means if they're able to complete that section, at that point, you should take it as a serious point. You should take it as an escalation that you have to make. Right. Now we go to the fifth item, which is the last one on the governance and decision. So decision delays becomes implementation risks. So this is very important. So decisions should be made as early as possible at whatever level in the project when you're implementing a core banking system. Whether it's a workstream lead, whether it's a developer, whether it's a supervisor or it's a project manager, it's a program manager, decisions, they have to be made very early because it helps to give people more time to look at them. So why does it matter? A decision that sits unresolved doesn't just slip the schedule, it also blocks every downstream team that is waiting for that decision. So decisions can be made at different levels in a project, to be honest with you. It can be made at team level, it can be made at project manager level, it can be made even at program level, it can also be made at board or steering committee level. So every decision should not be delayed when you're implementing a core banking system. The moment you delay, in most cases, imagine you're delaying a decision on a critical path activity. Most likely it's also going to extend the project. So decisions have to be made as quickly as possible at whatever level in the project. So what goes wrong when this is ignored? You have open questions, okay? You have freeze design, you have blocking testing, and they're also creating rushed cutover choices. So when you delay decisions, you're always going to have some open questions which are going to freeze design or blocking testing and so on and so forth. So always make sure that when you're implementing a core banking system, whatever the type of system, decisions have to be made as quickly as possible. So what is the mindset for the project manager? There is no decision. No decision is still a decision. Okay, sometimes you don't have to make a decision. It pushes risks into a later phase. So you should always make a decision. Okay, sometimes you don't have to make a decision, but you should know that you're just postponing the problem to the next phase. So let us look at a scenario. Okay, so a pending decision on whether to migrate 5 years or 10 years of transaction history sits with finance leadership for 6 weeks. So there's a delay in making a decision for 6 weeks. Data mapping, ETL design, and reconciliation planning, they all stopped, waiting for an answer that should be taken. That should have taken days. Okay. So in this scenario, the finance department, they've taken 6 weeks to make a decision. So you find this 6 weeks is also going to affect the project. So decision making, it should never be delayed in a project. This is a very good mindset when you're implementing a core banking system. Now, let us look at the practical actions or checklists.